On February 2nd, 2024, the WWE World Wrestling Entertainment posted a video on their channel, which would go on to become their most disliked video ever in as little as 9 hours, beating out the second most disliked by multiple times, when the latter video had 50 times the views than the former. And in less than a week after the video was uploaded, the whole case would be covered by TMZ as well as Barstool and USA Today, all under a rather negative light. But then, 6 days after that video was uploaded, the WWE would pivot and turn this fiasco into a sprawling massive meta story in a way you could only pull off in pro wrestling. And they had everyone talking, and most people were back happy again. The WWE throughout its long history has always seen ups and downs, whether it be the mythic fabled Attitude Era, or Ruthless Aggression, or the reality era that people in their late teens and early 20s such as myself are more familiar with. The general interest and fan perception around the product has always fluctuated, regardless of the times, with the exception of maybe the aforementioned Attitude Era. But ever since July of 2022, following the appointment of a new head of creative, the WWE has seen a resurgence in all aspects of the business. Everything has been revitalized, from mainstream exposure to fan investment, everything, which has led to many people calling the current era of WWE a quote, new wrestling boom. So why did the WWE go ahead with what might very well be the biggest creative disaster ever during a quote unquote wrestling boom, where everyone seemed to be happy with the direction of the company until now? And how did the subsequent fix come about? What happened is one of the most frustrating but at the same time interesting cases to ever unravel in the world of pro wrestling, and it really paints a picture of the kind of rabbit hole that wrestling truly is. There are a lot of moving factors and complicated scenarios that led up to this boiling point, so we have to peel it back layer by layer. I'm Ero Takeshi. I make documentaries, deep dives and reviews on anime, manga, movies, K-dramas, everything. Make sure to subscribe for some storytelling. To start, we have to look at the background events and behind-the-scenes company politics that led to all of this. Vince McMahon, the founder and once acting chairman of the WWE, for the longest time was the brains behind everything you see on WWE TV. The good, the bad, the ugly. Despite there being a creative team in place for the WWE, the final call was always up to Vince, who had a habit of doing whatever he pleased with the product, even when the fans demanded otherwise, such as reducing fan favorites to comedy acts or forcing wrestlers that aren't ready and aren't accepted by the audience into main event positions. All of this culminated in the audience becoming jaded over the years, or worse, tuning out entirely, mostly from 2018 to 2020. But in July of 2022, the Wall Street Journal broke some news that changed the wrestling industry forever. The article states that the board of WWE was internally investigating a $3 million hush money cover-up. This money was paid to a former employee by Vince McMahon, and as of 2024, this former employee has now been revealed to be Miss Janelle Grunt. Miss Grunt has filed a lawsuit against Vince, which goes into grisly, stomach-turning detail about everything that was happening behind the scenes, with extreme physical and emotional abuse and trafficking being just a mere fraction of the things that are mentioned in the documents. But that's 2024. To go back to 2022, when the initial article was published, within days after the first report, Vince McMahon would shockingly retire from the WWE via a Twitter announcement, and a massive changing of the guard ensued in the wake of these news. The most relevant change to this video being Triple H, the son-in-law of Vince, being appointed as the new head of creative once everything was said and done. There are definitely a lot more that I could get into in regards to both Vince's crimes as well as the regime change that took place afterwards, but I don't want to make this video far too complicated for casual viewers, and we do need to get into the title part of this video, so that's the gist of it. Triple H, prior to having the entire company for himself, used to run the developmental brand of WWE called NXT. NXT at the time was regarded by many people to be superior to the flagship shows Raw and SmackDown. NXT was geared towards a more hardcore audience with a focus on quality matchups and long-term stories. So the prospect of Triple H taking over all of WWE was a very exciting one. And true enough, the WWE would flourish under Triple H. Now, Triple H as a storyteller is still heavily flawed and far from being perfect, but what can be taken away from him is that he's at the very least not out of touch. And the fan reactions reflected that, because from 2022 to 2024, the WWE would explode in popularity. Gone are the gimmicky, nonsensical stories that felt like they were trying to spite the fanbase on purpose, replaced by stories that actually have payoffs and actually reward you for following week to week. Like I mentioned earlier, it's this consistently good output that resulted in fan morale being restored and thus bringing about the quote-unquote new wrestling boom. But since the fans are passionate again, and they unironically enjoy the WWE now, unlike the desensitized fans of the previous era who were pretty much just watching wrestling begrudgingly only because they can't quit, it also means that if the WWE were to betray the trust of the audience again and do something stupid, people aren't just going to shrug it off like, what did you expect? This time, the backlash is going to be severe. And to betray the audience is exactly what WWE did. In order to understand just what kind of fiasco this is, as well as the admittedly brilliant save just 6 days later, we have to look at the man that is the driving force behind this negative PR firestorm the WWE is dealing with. 1. Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is a second-generation wrestler, son of the legendary Dusty Rhodes. Dusty joined the WWE in the late 80s where he quickly made a name for himself with his unusual approach to wrestling. Instead of showing off a toned bodybuilder physique and presenting himself as a larger-than-life superhero, Dusty's entire character was that he was a relatable man of the people, representing the working class. And Dusty's interviews and promos would remain throughout the years as some of the most important pieces of wrestling history. But unfortunately, as an active wrestler, Dusty was never able to win the coveted WWE Championship. He did win the match on a technicality by scoring a count-out victory against his opponent superstar Billy Graham. But in order to win a championship, you have to score a pinfall or a submission, and so Dusty never got to claim the honor of being a champion, which is something that Cody Rhodes would later use as the central motivations behind his character to win the championship that his father never had. What makes the situation even more heartbreaking is that after retiring as a wrestler and transitioning into more of a backstage role at the developmental system of the WWE, nurturing and training the next generation, Dusty would tragically pass away at age 69 in June of 2015 to kidney failure. On Cody's side, to put even more salt on the wound, during this time Cody Rhodes was floundering in the WWE and couldn't show to his father a version of himself that he could be fully proud of. Cody Rhodes joined the WWE main roster in 2007, and from then up to 2016, he had a lot of stop and start success. Cody went through many character changes that showed you just how talented he was. Cody once played an insecure model character who was given men grooming tips, and he went through this Two-Face-like arc where his nose was broken in storyline, and he turned into a paranoid disturbed man as a result of his good looks being ruined, although they were fine. He also once pitched a Tony Stark-like character that never got greenlit by the WWE, the CEO of Rhodes Industries. It was clear that Cody had no shortage of creativity, and yet he could never truly crack the code and blossom into a main eventer. This string of unfortunate events would culminate in the lowest moment of Cody's professional career, the character Stardust, an extraterrestrial being with really animated facial expressions and goofy antics. It was a total mess, and Cody knew he could never become a main eventer with this character, so he finally ended up requesting his release from the WWE, which was eventually granted. Following this, Cody rebuilt himself in the independent scene, and it's during this stretch that he morphed into the character he's best known for today, a fiery, intense hero with an unyielding spirit, a protagonist-like character you just want to rally behind and follow into battle. He did try to portray a bad guy during this run here and there, but the fans just refused to boo him. And around this time, Cody aligned himself with a wrestling faction called the Elite who were famous in Japan, and together, what they did for the independent scene would culminate in the foundation of All Elite Wrestling, the WWE's biggest rival promotion of the modern era. Cody's AEW saga is a whole can of worms that I'm not going to get into for this video, but Cody would continue to portray his esteemed passionate hero character throughout his AEW run, but some things happened along the way where Cody fell out of favor with the AEW audience. Cody has since denied that fan perception is the reason for his departure, but at the end of this generally disliked run, Cody would find himself quitting AEW, the same company that he himself helped launch, and once again triumphantly returning to the WWE at the WrestleMania 38 event. And this time, he was far from being something like Stardust. He was simply just a star. He kept his presentation from AEW and made it pretty clear what his goals were: to capture the WWE Championship, the belt that his father never won. After his return, what followed was a string of intense emotional moments on the microphone and one great performance after another, one of which includes wrestling with a literal torn pectoral. The fans were fully behind him, and Cody goes above and beyond for his supporters, like giving away free tickets for children or gifting his weight belts to various fans. For those who may be unfamiliar with pro wrestling, the WWE has always struggled with creating good guy wrestlers, referred to as babyfaces. For example, John Cena is a monumental success in the grand scheme of things, but he also had a portion of his career where he was rejected by fans because he came across as somewhat of a corporately produced PR twine for the WWE. But the next phase of the company following John Cena was indefinitely worse. Roman Reigns, a wrestler hailing from the legendary Samoan dynasty who is also a relative of The Rock. Roman was firmly positioned as the face of the WWE from 2015 to pretty much the current day. Reigns is also a very important character in our discussion today, and from 2015 to 2020, Roman, just like Cody, portrayed a heroic babyface, and he was utterly despised by the audience. And I'm one of the few people who actually loved it, but unfortunately his run as a good guy was by all means a failure. So the WWE does not have the best track record of creating natural, likable good guy characters, which is why Cody Rhodes was and is so important. And starting from January of 2023, Cody's run in the WWE coincided with Triple H running things. So combine this naturally loved babyface and a fanbase that has been revitalized, you have this never seen before levels of support and momentum behind Cody, who was on his way to, and I quote, finish the story. Cody was and is the definitive protagonist of the current era of the WWE, one that isn't corporately produced, one that is actually accepted by children and adults alike. The only thing he needed to complete his crowning moment was the WWE Championship, but the man in possession of the belt is none other than the aforementioned Roman Reigns, who had now undergone a complete overhaul. He was no longer the awkward hero, and instead he's morphed into this manipulative, tyrannical god king of the WWE. And his reign as the undisputed WWE Universal Champion as of the recording of this video has surpassed 1200 days, knocking off any potential challenger throughout this 3-year reign of terror. And Roman Reigns in recent memory has become somewhat of a controversial topic among fans, because nowadays he works a very light schedule, and his matches are largely formulaic, i.e. boring. But to be fair to Roman, this issue only started to rear its head around mid-2022. Roman was brilliant during the first 2 years of his reign. He was one of the most exciting wrestlers to watch. New look, new moveset, a new aggression in the ring, subtle mannerisms, and improved acting skills. He really did fine-tune his craft, and that can't be taken away from him. So regardless of the fan perception around him recently, in the grand scheme of things, Roman Reigns is by far and away the biggest star of the WWE. So, you don't have to be some storytelling genius to understand where we're going with this. It's simple logic. On one hand, you have the biggest hero of the story who remains uncrowned, and on the other, the biggest villain that has been terrorizing the landscape. It just makes sense to have them fight. And in any story, it will also make sense for the protagonist to win when the time is right. Right? Well, Cody and Roman did fight, after Cody Rhodes won the 2023 edition of the Royal Rumble event, where a wrestler has to outlast 29 other wrestlers in order to win a shot at main eventing the WWE's biggest annual event, WrestleMania. The main event of WrestleMania 39 was a momentous clash between Cody and Roman, where everyone, barring the most hardcore Roman Reigns fans, expected Cody to win. But as it turns out, Cody lost, and this remains a very polarizing finish even up to this day. The issue with Roman Reigns has always been that while he is clearly a talented, hardworking, and deserving person, he's someone who has always had the machine behind him. Now, every industry, every company will have their chosen one, and the one they invest as their ace. There is nothing inherently wrong with it, especially if the person in question is as talented as Roman Reigns is. But when it reaches a point where they're completely overshadowing other talent that people would rather see, that becomes a problem. This is the reason that Roman Reigns as a good guy failed in the first place. But with that being said, Roman Reigns' popularity these days is simply on another level. His critically acclaimed family drama bloodline story, which also becomes very important for this video later on, has dominated the WWE since late 2020 and broke all kinds of records for the company. So this call to keep Roman as champion, while controversial, was not met with the kind of venomous vitriol that a good guy Roman once used to be. After all, a potential rematch could rectify things, and if anything, a loss could benefit Cody. And this adversity could add more depth to Cody's character that was kind of a Mary Sue up to that point. I don't really agree, but that's the defense, the cope that WWE fans had for that decision. So Cody spent the following year, 2023, fighting the likes of Brock Lesnar and rebuilding himself to have a second chance at finishing the story. While all of this was happening, behind the scenes, the WWE was once again going through a massive sea change. Reports came out in April of 2023 that Vince McMahon was selling the WWE to Endeavor, the owners of UFC, a $9.3 billion deal that saw the WWE and UFC operating under the same umbrella, a new group TKO. This did not have any immediate effects on the WWE on-screen product at the time, but we had no idea what this truly meant for the future. The date was January 27, 2024, a new year, and Cody Rhodes once again found himself competing in the Royal Rumble event, once again trying to outdo 29 other men to have a shot at redemption. It's worth mentioning that Cody wasn't the favorite to win the match this year. After all, winning back-to-back Royal Rumbles seemed a bit excessive, and only 3 wrestlers have ever done so. And yet, Cody did it, against all odds going back-to-back and pointing at Roman Reigns at the end to make it all but official that he's coming for him. The fans were happy and all was right with the world, or so it seemed. About 5 days before the Royal Rumble, news broke that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson of all people became a board member of TKO. It was certainly an interesting development, but people did not make much of it. Get this, The Rock is related to Roman Reigns, and the two have even interacted on WWE TV many years ago. So ever since Roman Reigns transitioned into this power-hungry egomaniac, with his arc being deeply rooted in his family lineage, many fans have been salivating at the prospect of a The Rock and Roman Reigns mega match. But for the longest time, it felt like this match would just never materialize. WrestleMania 37, WrestleMania 38, WrestleMania 39, which was literally titled Hollywood, never happened. And considering Cody Rhodes has already made his choice, WrestleMania 40 was out of question as well. Or is it? On February 2nd, 2024, Cody Rhodes was to make his choice official: Roman Reigns or the other champion, Seth Rollins. Cody comes face to face with the man that embarrassed him last year, and he vows that he's going to take everything from him. But, and I quote, not at WrestleMania. Cody says this as he brings out none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and he voluntarily gives up his rights as a Royal Rumble winner so The Rock can challenge Roman Reigns in his stead. The internet just completely broke down. 2 years of storytelling all down the drain. People wanted Roman Reigns and The Rock, but not like this. This is a complete character assassination of Cody Rhodes, and will go down as one of the most egregious choices that WWE has ever made. The character Cody Rhodes went to hell and back just to get a chance at redemption, to finish the story and honor his father. And right before the finish line, he gave up his spot to a part-timer, so he could go on and fight the other champion, who, for your information, is a wrestler Cody Rhodes has already beaten 3 times with no losses. This was appalling. Reports emerged that this was number 1, The Rock and TKO's call, made possible by The Rock's position of power, and number 2, this is a lot more sinister but done in an attempt to generate good PR for the WWE in the wake of Miss Janelle Grant's lawsuit, as well as an injury crisis that they were dealing with. How true is this? I don't know. But what I do know is that this couldn't have always been the plan, because Cody Rhodes won the Royal Rumble, which proves that at least the first statement is most likely true. So afterwards, #WeWantCody trended for 3 days straight with over 300,000 tweets, and even other celebrities joined in support of Cody. WWE's social media was bombarded with dislikes. I mentioned earlier that revitalized fan interest also means that if the audience gets betrayed again, this time they're going to respond accordingly. And that's what happened here. They essentially undid about 2 years worth of storytelling just because they did not have enough faith in their own talent, even when the fans did. Not to mention, this also sent a very negative message to all of the full-time wrestlers putting in work, essentially telling them that they're ultimately expendable. You can work as hard as possible and carry the company on your back and still not be appreciated, still not go the distance, and have your moment taken away as long as management so wishes. It's a classic example of the WWE being just too stuck in their ways to ever change unless they're met with severe backlash. The Rock is objectively one of the most famous people on the entire planet, and his work ethic is undeniable. You can give someone the same resources and the support system The Rock has, and they probably still won't turn out like him. And there are times when he genuinely comes across like a good guy with his fans. So in that regard, I can't take anything away from The Rock. But with that being said, The Rock's image is still exaggerated, and the average celebrity would never admit that there's someone who is diligent and works hard, but also someone who has a machine behind them, or a good head start. A realistic, nuanced image like that does not sell. People want the dramatic zero-to-hero rags to riches story. So how authentic is the image that Dwayne Johnson promotes? People have been becoming more and more wary of that, of The Rock's image, which largely feels like a walking PR signboard. Catchphrases, excessively promoting brand deals, excessively promoting his tequila, rumors of his movie contracts including a clause that states he can lose a fight, controversies around how he conducts himself behind the scenes for his movies, the controversy around his physique and his diet. All of this have been looming beneath the surface of The Rock's seemingly perfect empire for a long time. It's just that they were never really that big of an issue that The Rock's public image would start taking noticeable damage. Black Adam was the first real crack in The Rock's shining armor, but no one could have predicted that wrestling of all things would be the trigger point, causing all of this to explode onto the surface. But I've already mentioned that they did pivot, and managed to turn this into one of the most brilliant meta stories I have ever seen. So how did that come about? I wrote this video before they even made the change, and in the original script I wrote, "They say wrestling is a meta-fiction. Sometimes what we see on screen and the backstage politics are one and the same. Real life turns into fiction, and fiction turns into real life. A heroic, unyielding champion of the people, accepted by children and adults alike, getting his position usurped and thwarted by a man who used to be known as the people's champion, but now seems to have fallen out of favor with an audience that has come to view him as somewhat of a corporate power-hungry sellout. That itself is kind of a story of its own." That's what I said. When I wrote that, I had no idea where the story was actually going. It was literally just my commentary on the actual real-life situation. But now, the WWE has officially embraced the negative response, the rumors, the controversies, the reports, and this whole ordeal has become this tangled spiderweb of storytelling where everything is canon and nothing makes sense and is just as brilliant as it is stupid. So on February 8, 2024, the WWE held a press conference in Las Vegas where more information about WrestleMania 40 was to be unveiled. The fans waited for the end segment of the show with bated breath. This was it. If they were to move ahead with Roman and Rock, this is where we would find out. Near the end of the event, Seth Rollins, the other champion, came out. Following suit was Roman Reigns. The two had a bit of a heated exchange before Roman would move on, and blatantly try to overstep Cody's rights as the Rumble winner by saying that he, as the champion, picks The Rock, as opposed to the winner of the Rumble being the one to pick. That's when our so-called People's Champion would enter the scene to a pretty mixed crowd. The Rock would try to hype up the mega match between Roman Reigns and himself as the crowd became more and more negative. The Rock appeared a bit flustered before pulling up this Samoan bloodline chart like a PowerPoint presentation. The Rock says, "There is only one royal family in pro wrestling." This was an obvious shot at Cody and his family lineage. And from this point forward, it started to look more and more like The Rock was playing a villain, which if you know anything about The Rock after his movie fame, that sounds nearly impossible. And then The Rock started to sound even more nefarious, saying that Roman and The Rock is the biggest match ever whether you like it or not. That's when finally Cody Rhodes would come out and shut both of them down, before officially declaring his pick. To a massive cheer from the crowd, he says, Now that alone was pretty cool, but what followed was arguably crazier, because Cody says that Roman's ancestors would be ashamed of him, which for some reason seemed to have triggered The Rock, who slaps Cody, as Seth Rollins will also get involved, and the scene just erupted into chaos. So now the story is that The Rock has embraced his role as this politicking Machiavellian overlord, while Cody and Roman 2 is set to take place on WrestleMania 40. Rock and Roman, who only as of a couple of weeks ago were supposed to fight, are now colluding to create a mega bloodline. The same with Cody and Seth, who had a great segment at the Raw after the press event. Seth Rollins officially aligned himself with Cody and said he would aid him in this battle against Roman. Cody is the last hope. This is the last real chance at stopping the evil that is Roman Reigns, the monster who now has two heads. The monster conspiring with an even more powerful and wicked individual. So now, WrestleMania seemed to be heading in the direction of a tag team match between these four men as well. Does any of this make sense? No. Is the February 2nd episode of SmackDown even canon? I don't know. It's like fan backlash and real life drama opened a new timeline. Looking at this from an objective writing standpoint, it's kinda terrible, but that's what makes wrestling compelling. It turned out more intriguing this way than it would have been if it was just Cody and Roman. You couldn't get away with this kind of making stuff up on the fly writing in any kind of fiction, but you do in pro wrestling, and it's awesome. Right now, the direction seems to be a very Infinity War and Endgame scenario. Cody and Roman 2 will most likely be the most ridiculous thing ever, with a million interferences and twists and turns. And I can't wait. Not to mention, this new timeline has also opened up so many possibilities. Will Roman and The Rock happen next year? Will Roman become a hero again? Is The Rock the secret ending final boss now? Nobody knows. Probably not even the WWE themselves. And that's what makes it great. So there you have it. That's the full story behind the WWE's most disliked video ever, and the subsequent meta story that made The Rock actually act in almost 10 years. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe for more.